And first up this week is going to be Death's Favorite Warlock, book number 3, written by Charles Dean. It is 391 pages. It is $3.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. A crazed princess, royal intrigue, relentless assassins, and a merciless army. Lars must overcome all these and even deadlier challenges as he navigates new threats in the brutal cultivation world he had thought he finally understood. Follow Lars as he does everything he can to survive and grow stronger in this cultivation-themed Gamelit LitRPG adventure. There we go. Fine description. The adventures of Lars continue in this cultivation world. The story continues to be very slice of life, and this is a slice of life story. I think the author actually models this on a lot of actual cultivation workshop stories that are translated from other countries, and so in those stories, they are serial, and so what that means is that little chunks or chapters are released on a regular basis, and they can be hundreds and hundreds of chapters long. And because the author's intention is not to have necessarily a traditional three-act structure, but to continue on the stories on these waves of like entertaining, fighting, commentary, dialogue. I think that this series is also plotted along similar norms, because at the end it's partially a cultivation story. And so there's a lot of dialogue. It's a very slice of life story where you follow the main character as he goes through these adventures in this cultivation world, even though he himself isn't a cultivator. He does his RPG progression instead. But the other people around him do cultivation, and there's plenty of that kind of exploration of those progression systems and schemes and powers and abilities. But a lot of the story is just dialogue and joking around and making like this weird combination of humor of adult jokes and pop culture references and just good dialogue stuff. And I think the dialogue is definitely a bigger highlight of the story in the series, just because there is so much of it. So if you get into the story and you really like the dialogue, I think you really like the story, and I think you'll continue to enjoy the series. There's still action, there's adventure. There are fights in the story. There's probably not as much action as probably I personally enjoy. But it's still entertaining. I have a nice time with it. And again, there are audiobook versions of this that are out, so the dialogue really, I think, is kicked up a notch on audiobook versions as well. But even the ebooks are still very, very entertaining. I did like the RPG progression, because each one of these books, the main character kind of gets these new abilities. The author makes sure that there is consistent RPG progression at the beginning of every chapter. There's a nice stat page, so you don't have to worry about crunchiness or not getting enough of that information. It all exists there, very much so. But in this book, I really liked the potential for this new class abilities. And I like the fact that it was very non-combat oriented necessarily. So there's some interesting ways that I think the author can resolve conflicts, create new problems, and deal with things that are, again, outside of necessarily just killing and beating everybody up. So I always like those different options in resolving conflicts and stuff. So good stuff here. So overall, had a good time with it. Again, I'm probably not the biggest fan of the cultivation genre in general. I like solid, crunchy number RPG progression, which is why I like LitRPG, of course. So it's hard for me to judge that particular portion of it, but I think it hits notes for those fans who've enjoyed it from reading the reviews anyways. For me, I had a nice time with it. Again, a lot of dialogue in the story. So if you read anything in the series and the dialogue doesn't work for you, it continues on. So, it is what it is. But if you like the humor, and there is a specific sense of humor here, if you like the dialogue, if you like the jokiness, and the way that that interaction unfolds, I think this is going to be a really fun series for you. So there you go. For me, it gets a score of 7.4 out of 10. Death's Favorite Warlock with a score of 7.4 out of 10.